And now, ladies and gentlemen,
Put your thumbs up and say it's Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo, Tickety Boo, everything's Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo, son. Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo!
Ever replay a conversation in your head, wondering what they really meant, or if you said the wrong thing? Welcome to the Overthinker's Guide to Communication. Today, we're talking about how what we say, how we say it, and even what we don't say can feel like a puzzle for those of us who overanalyze. Whether you're the one overthinking or trying to connect with someone who does, this episode is all about cutting through the noise and finding clarity in how we communicate. Let's get into it. Well, hello and welcome back to another episode of Tickety Boo. I'm here in the studio with Iona, Ian and Barney, and today we're going to be talking about communication, different types of communication, and how communication can play a key part in the lives of people that overthink. So, who wants to open up? Who's going to start with? Who's going to communicate about communicating?
Well, it's one of those things that we all do, and as humans, it's a natural ability that we have to communicate in one form or another. But it's a skill set that we have to learn, and it's something that we need to practice.
But it's also not always about what we say, it's how we receive it, what we make of the information that we're receiving as well.
I know. Now, that was the thing. When we said communicating, we didn't say speaking.
Yeah.
The biggest part of
Listening.
communicating is listening, not just standing waiting for your turn to talk. Mm-hmm. That's the secret to
active
quality communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's really interesting, in the last episode we were talking about events that happen to us through life and our interpretation. So when somebody communicates to us, we interpret what they've said to us and then we add the meaning onto it. Because if you think about communication, I can remember being at school. There was a teacher, Mr. Davis. I don't know if you remember him, Ian.
Yes.
He was like one of these proper old guard teachers that would shout your name across the playground. Now, if I heard, Griffiths, you would immediately go like, uh-oh. But then if you say the same word like Griffiths or Andy, the same word delivered in a slightly different tone has a completely different feeling, doesn't it? And this is the way that communication just works generally across the board.
Absolutely. In a social environment, you make a comment with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek in the pub. It's funny. You say it with a twinkle in your eye. You say it the next week when you're slightly run down after work, and it's all of a sudden the same choice of words are offensive.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if you guys know, see if you send someone a message and they give you a thumbs up back, that really gets my back up.
Oh, does it really?
Really?
Yeah.
Sorry, Andy.
Just thought I'd air it here on the podcast. Enough of the thumbs up, guys. No, it's one of those things that's just like, maybe they've asked you a question and you've gone into a bit of time of responding and giving them a bit of a gun, and you get and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but my interpretation, I suppose my expectation is, well, thank you for that, or, and they've not done anything wrong, but my interpretation of that creates a different response for me.
Well, then I'm intrigued. If somebody puts a heart instead, would you interpret that differently? Is it literally a thumbs up? Because this is a whole other...
Is it a lack of effort?
Yeah.
I think the thumbs up is that's great, but I can't be bothered to write it, so we have this thumbs up.
But a heart has exactly the same...
Well, I think I would still be confused by the heart as well, but that's just, by the way, I'm not saying they're wrong and I'm right. That's just my interpretation of the communication. But
well, and I think this is the problem with communication in text messages, because a lot of us now do that. I used to be a big talker on the phone. Now my phone rings. I'm like, oh no,
who's this
phoning me? For me, like in the communication, it's like I want to acknowledge that I've seen it. Yeah. And I'll get back. I'm busy. Doesn't mean I don't care, but I also know if I don't respond, I may never come back to it. That's a whole other show. But yeah, I again, this is really interesting. We're now coming into expectations.
Or, like sorry, all the people that send me thumbs up, I do love you. The conversation I have with myself in my head, the communication I have with me, my own internal communication. I'm communicating with myself and I'm creating a response there as well. Yeah. So can we see how multifaceted communication is?
Yeah. Now we're taking down. When I suggested communication, we've now got a whole load of areas where we're not.
We're going to be here for hours.
But just to touch on that one subject, because I think it's so important and links into every single podcast that we've done.
Yeah.
It's communicating with yourself. Always communicate with yourself kindly. If I was going to talk to another person, I would use body language. I would use a choice of words. The choice of words would be loving, authoritative, informative, whatever I wanted that person to feel. Because it's not the words that people remember. It's the feeling associated with the words that you delivered. It's how that conversation makes them feel. So when you're having a conversation with yourself in your head, and you're talking to yourself like that angry headmaster or that bully, you're bullying yourself. And you have hundreds of thousands of conversations with yourself a day, but maybe 40 with other people.
Yeah.
So that communication is the most important there is.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a phrase that we teach on the course here at Peace of Mind when we're learning NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and there's something in it called a presupposition. And one of the presuppositions is you cannot not communicate. You are always communicating. So if you're a keynote speaker and you're stood up on stage and you're talking and everyone's just sitting there with their head down or rolling their eyes, they're doing non-verbal communication to you, and then you're taking the meaning of that and you're communicating to yourself, oh, they think I'm boring or they don't like me. But I'm talking right now, Iona, and you're nodding your head. So I'm going, Iona's liking this. She's nodding her head and I'm feeling different. So you're not even speaking, but you're communicating with me, and we're constantly calibrating and picking up on this stuff.
Now, of course, if Iona rolled her eyes, your natural instinct would to be shut down that conversation.
I'd be off.
Or if she gives you the look.
Shut up, you're talking rubbish. But can you see, communication is absolutely key. And maybe, is it our responsibility to become better communicators? Or is it our responsibility, or maybe it's both, to actually make sure we've truly understood the context of the communication, or to ask or to get clarification?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
And also I think communication is, as we've come into the world of technology, you know, there was a time where we didn't have mobile phones, where people were only phoning each other.
Yeah.
Now it's so much communication is done through text message. Like, I remember being in primary school in the 70s, and one of the, our headmistress was teaching us how to answer the phone. You'd pick up the phone, you'd go, hello, you've reached Glasby 337. And so we were being taught how to communicate just in very basic ways then, whereas kids today don't do that. I'm already reluctant when somebody phones. It's like, oh my gosh, they're ringing. I feel that we've lost a lot of the ability to communicate. It's not just second nature. We're not teaching our children how to answer the phone because they don't need to.
Yeah, agreed. So all of a sudden we live in, face to face. I mean, we were talking about this with the dating world. Not that just
sorry,
clarifying
Louise.
that, Mrs. Young. Yes. No, but we say where you can't reread it before you send it. You haven't got time to think about it. You can't edit it when it's face to face. But to me, I would give all that away in a second to be able to look in your face, look you in the eye, pick up on your smile. The openness.
I have
of
to
your gestures.
say,
to me, that's communication.
As an overthinker, WhatsApp messages or SMS messages or Facebook messages, there's no tonality in them. You add the tonality in as you read the message. Yeah. So you can read the message and add a different tone on it and it feels completely different. And to an overthinker, you really need... The overthinker needs to be aware of what they're adding in, but also if you're communicating with an overthinker, I mean, if you look at the stats, only 7% of human communication is verbal. Yeah. 55% of it is body language.
This is why I love Zoom. I do love a Zoom call or a FaceTime, because then I can see the person.
Yeah. Yeah, because like we said earlier, the way you say a name 2 different ways makes you feel very different, doesn't it? But when you're doing WhatsApps or whatever it is, you take all of that tone out and you as the thinker add that tone in. And in this world of digital connection where most stuff is now, instant messaging and all the rest of it, more conversations are happening like that than actually in person. It's almost like talking at a deeper level and connecting with people is becoming a forgotten art.
Yeah, definitely.
You can pretty much live your life now without speaking to somebody. You can order your shopping, you can buy a car online, you can book a holiday, you can chat to your friends on instant messaging. You could actually, if you wanted to, go through life without really one-on-one communicating with people or very minimal interfacing with people. So it's almost like a skill we're losing.
Yeah, it is. But there's reasons for that. There's, there's anxiety developing around conversations that I'm probably more anxious about. I'm a fairly good communicator, I like to think. But in situations, I get anxious about what I'm going to say. Because I live in a world now where you can't say that, you can't say this. Oh no, I've said that all my life. All of a sudden it's offensive. You're told what you can say and what you can't say.
But it's also what you don't say.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, they didn't put a kiss on the end. What does that mean? So these non-verbal cues, I was expecting them to say that and they've said it like this or they've not said it at all. What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. They didn't put a kiss on the end, so all of a sudden that message is now 2 messages.
Yeah.
Which is one I'm interpreting them both, but one that I've totally and utterly made up.
Yeah. We've all had this experience. Maybe you've sent somebody a message and they've not responded. And you're like, what's going on there then?
A random question for you.
Yeah.
Just sprung to mind. Do you know when we're making up these little in-between bits, do you think our internal dialogue and what we're telling ourselves interprets what we feel in between in the gaps?
Yeah, well, that's what our brain does. Whenever there's a missing bit of information, our unconscious adds in, it fills the gap, and it normally fills the gap with negativity. So if you send a text message to a friend and they're not responded for 24 hours, you're like, what's wrong with them? Last time we spoke, we were all right. Maybe they don't like me anymore. Maybe it was that, and all these stories start firing off in your head, and then 2 days later they go, oh, I'm really sorry, I've been absolutely flat out, I've been meaning to get back to you. And suddenly that whole story completely evaporates. It's gone, oh, that's great, nice to hear from you, and you forget the story that you've been wrapped up in.
It's really interesting. So I am not an overthinker in quite like the two of you seem to be. No. But there was, I do know that my ex-husband, when we were first dating, if he didn't respond to me instantly, I would start to worry. And, we lived in different countries as well. And I think it was something I've learned over these years. I mean, we're talking, I was in my 30s then, I'm in my 50s now. Yeah, now I'm fine. I have some friends who I've sent them a message, they don't respond, and they may not respond for weeks. It's not that I don't care, but I also know how busy they are. So I've gotten to a point now, I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I am not triggered by people not communicating back with me. They'll get round to it. Also because I know I'm busy, so sometimes I don't get back to people. So I have a lot of acceptance around it, but I have to, it's not, I've learned to accept it because there was a time where I did read in between,
But I think the problem is with overthinkers is we replay conversations or we replay scenarios or particular words. It's the loop that we play inside of our head, and we're normally so far off the mark of the reality of what that conversation was.
That's it. And we just give certain words too much meaning. Like an example was, at the weekend, somebody had done something that that certainly wasn't an action that I would have performed towards me, but I'd forgotten about it. 10 minutes later, I've just walked away and went, didn't think anything of it, walked away, came back to continue the conversation. Till lunchtime the next day, he was buckled up with anxiety, replaying what had happened in his head and how I was interpreting it. Whereas in reality, when he just came and actually asked me, it was a 2-second conversation, face to face. Of no, it's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think this happens a lot where people that aren't natural communicators get a large hit of anxiety before a conversation if they know a conversation's going, and then they deal with the conversation. And if you was trying to say to them afterwards, was that conversation worth all that anxiety and build up? No.
But your anxiety is adding that deeper meaning to the interface, isn't it, to the actual event? So it's almost like we're contaminating, we're polluting the reality of the event fueled by emotion.
Well, there's that, and then there's also this addiction that we have to control. And then you don't know what way a conversation's going to go. Is it going to be friendly? Are they going to find me funny? Are they going to be grumpy? Will we get on? And all this kind of stuff. But then when the conversation, you've got two people interacting that want to understand, because primarily the function of communication is to be understood by another.
Well, you just nailed it. We want to be understood, and sometimes we expect to be understood. Like when I'm teaching here in the centre, I'll say to the students, we start at 9 o'clock. Yeah. We start at 9 o'clock. Be ready to start at 9 o'clock. Now, what I learnt is that some of them would come through the door at 8:58 and 53 seconds, looking for a cup of tea to put the coat down and not be prepared. And actually I was getting frustrated with these individuals, because when someone says to me, we're starting at 9, I want to be there before 9. I want to get there, make sure I've got time, get myself in. So I had to adjust my communication to go, we start at 9 o'clock. Please be here for 10 to 9, ready to go, so we can actually start at 9 o'clock. I had to shift my communication.
So was it their fault, or was it your fault for not clearly communicating?
I think both.
Yeah, both, because I, like you, if I'm told to be somewhere at 9, if I arrive close to 9, I'm late in my mind, and I will have been completely.
Don't get me wrong, there was that proportion of students that were here 20, 25 minutes before, because they're of that mindset. But I found myself getting frustrated, and I'm like, no, you need to communicate differently, because not everybody's going to receive the message in the way that you've portrayed it or meant it to be portrayed. And sometimes I think with like digital messaging and WhatsApp, because you might be busy, it's like a blah, and you actually read it backwards and you're like, I probably wouldn't have said it like that, because you're now thinking of they taking it out of context. And I know you hate them. That's why sometimes I prefer voice notes, although some people turn voice notes into podcasts.
Yeah.
But with a voice, I can hear how you're talking, and your tone. I might not be able to see you, but tonality and facial expression to me is absolutely everything, especially for somebody that grew up with trying to control the mood and or are they okay with me kind of thing.
Well, do you know, I think you just hit the nail on the head. It's how we've learned to communicate through growing up. So I was born partially deaf, so I learned to hear by seeing what people were saying. I had to see their faces. So I've just said I like Zoom. I don't like voice notes because I can't read it, I can't remember what's being said. So quite often when I am re-listening to a voice note, that's why I put it in text form, so I can summarize what's been said, because I need to see it in order to know what's being said. So that's how I learned to communicate.
You've never communicated that to us, so we never understood the reason.
Oh no, she sends me, I hate voice messages.
Oh no, she said that. No, you said that, but you never communicated why you don't like them. So now and again, when I'm feeling naughty, I'll deliberately send you one.
I know.
just as I can picture your heckles going up, because I think it's funny. But now I know there's a context behind that, I won't do that.
Oh, well,
now that's been communicated.
And I'm guilty of sometimes going, oh, this is a lot to type. I can voice message it, but I need to take the responsibility of going, I want to communicate. So if I'm communicating with Iona and I want the message to be clear, I think it's my responsibility, now I understand your communication style, to shift my communication away on an important matter that you go, that resonates with me.
But isn't this interesting? So it's learning and understanding that we already know people learn differently.
Yeah.
So, we have visual learners, auditory, and all that. And we also have already uncovered that we communicate in different ways. Now, I don't go into overwhelm or anxiety or overthinking. However, if I can't see it, whether it's in written form or on a video, I have trouble hearing it and remembering it. So, yeah. Every day's a school day.
But that's really interesting. When you were telling us the story of how you needed to see people's lips moving, I imagine then probably during COVID when people were wearing face masks, that was probably quite challenging for you.
I couldn't hear them. I actually went to buy a lottery ticket. I don't often buy a lottery ticket, but it was one of those random times. Anyway, the poor girl behind the counter, I'm old enough to be her mother, I'm pretty sure, so I'm not being derogatory here. The young lady behind, I could not understand her. And it was, I had to keep getting it, and I wanted her just to pull her mask down and say the things she was saying. She had quite a strong accent. It wasn't her fault. Everybody else seemed to be fine with her. I couldn't see her lips. I couldn't hear what she was saying because I couldn't see her. Now I've had, and just to be clear, I have had hearing tests. My hearing is only just below average. I'm fine. So according to the analysis, I can hear perfectly fine. But I can't if I can't see your lips moving.
It's crazy, isn't it? I can remember in my events business a number of years ago, we had a very large corporate client, very large, and we just finished doing a very big job for them, huge job, high pressure. And it was over the weekend, and on the Monday I opened up my emails, and there was an email from the top person going, "We need to talk. Are you available at 2:00 today?" And my mind just went absolutely spiraled. Like, they weren't happy with the job, maybe we've done something wrong, maybe we're getting fired or whatever it is, and completely over analysing the whole situation. I ended up on the call with them and went, "What you did for us at the weekend was absolutely amazing, and can we discuss you doing more work with us?" And like that, the whole way I felt completely changed. So, but it can be sometimes the way that you say something to somebody. It's not that person didn't intentionally set out to go, "Oh, this is going to get them overthinking." They were probably typing it on the fly because they were really busy or something. But sometimes I think, me as the receiver, back then I was a different person and my anxiety wasn't left unchecked. Today I'd be like, I'm just going to take that at surface level. They want to talk to me at 2:00, and whatever it is, I'll deal with it at that point in time. But as an overthinker, you could see how you could quite easily spiral into that.
Yeah, definitely. And one small communication can take up hours of your time and energy. Playing it over in your head, different versions of it.
Yeah, and that's I think that's why we prefer like Zoom calls, or we like to sit in a room with a person, because fundamentally we're energy. We pick up on energy. We work with energy.
That's why I love face-to-face interaction with people. It's an energy exchange. It's not just about how you talk. It's about how you make each other feel, and you pick up on each other's cues. And
there's micro expressions which you don't even know you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it is, isn't it? The nodding, the smiling, the frowning, whatever it may be. But I gave the analogy of a keynote speaker being on stage earlier, and they're talking and somebody's frowning in the audience, and your mind, you're in a dialogue, immediately goes, they don't like what I'm saying, or they're not interested. However, that person maybe could have a headache, or that maybe they can't see the screen properly and they're squinting their eyes.
The truth is, they've got a newborn baby, they've been up 4 times in the night, but they really wanted to hear you speak, so they made sure they were there.
Yeah.
2 very different interpretations of the same facial expression.
So why is it then that we very rarely ask for clarification? If we get so riddled in anxiety, why is it we don't go, when I received that message, I've perceived it as though blah de blah de blah. Is it because we're afraid of looking stupid or sounding stupid?
We just seem to want to accept our own interpretation until it's clarified.
Now and again you get a message and the person goes, "Everything okay?" And then you immediately go, "Oh, have they read something into that last message that I haven't read into?" And you go, "Yeah, of course, why?" And they get even more paranoid. And I normally prefer at that point to pick up the phone and so they can hear voice, if you know what I mean. So I think that ability to shift and adapt, and also be a bit compassionate towards some people, because you don't know what people have been through.
Yeah.
You don't know what their experience is.
Yeah.
But as you say, one of the really important tools in you communicating and being understood and interpreted in the way that you want to is the use of words. If you can't be face-to-face and you're using expressions, tone, where you can say the wrong thing but you say it with a cheek and a wink and they get you, it's like you've just said, somebody says, "Can we talk?" or whatever. A nice, "Oh, you okay? You okay?" That's, my wife sends me, "You okay?" But something that's quite lovely, and since we've been sharing quite so much stuff on Facebook, what I do get, just checking in. Just checking in, and that they're asking exactly the same question, but somebody's saying, "Just checking in, how are you, pal?" Is very different. "You okay?"
Yeah.
It's open to slightly less interpretation in my eyes. It sets the tone due to the words that have been used.
Yeah. absolutely. You know, it's like I can communicate with you because of the friendship and the history that we've got differently to other friends because we just know how each other are.
Yeah.
But if I communicated with you the way I communicated with, say, like my brother or something like that, you'd be like, that doesn't sit right with me. And I think it is a good skill to become a better communicator and to be able to be adaptable in your communication.
Being able to adapt different communication styles to different people. And now we're talking about this. Another important thing is making sure that we're having the same types of conversation at the same time. Now this is me. I can be in work mode, so I'm talking or working with a partner or something. One of you can be having a conversation about affection being understood, whatever it is, a personal item, while you're talking about work. So you're kind of having a conversation, but you're having two different types of conversation at the same time, which then leads to misunderstanding and
I find that
arguments.
happens a lot more in text when, like, because your messages are crossing over.
Yeah.
But we kind of got this communication overwhelm at the moment where we're constantly communicating via social media platforms, through email, through all the different types of connection that we've got. Do you think we kind of get like communication fatigue?
Yeah.
Where, you know, when we grew up, if you wanted to communicate with somebody, you walked down to the phone box and put 10p in and phoned them. I'm sounding really old now, by the way, I know. Or you phoned them at home, or you went and met them.
Yeah.
Today, I can communicate with you in about 10 different ways.
Yeah. Instantly.
So we would reserve stuff, we would bank stuff up, we would hold stuff back, but also we'd have space to decompress and have other experiences. So it's almost like we're always on at the moment.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying, do you feel that we can get communication fatigue where we're so plugged in
Yes.
Yeah.
that we're actually not effective?
Yes, but it's kind of on the other way with me. So sometimes when people aren't even communicating with me, I'm still checking. And sometimes I'm sat there and I'm still nobody's communicating with me, but I'm still checking my phone to see if I can.
Just in case they have.
Yeah.
I have all my notifications turned off, so I have to go into WhatsApp to see if I've got a message. I have to go into Facebook. It's been really great because I don't get that hit. It's not like, because I'm one of those people, I don't like having unread emails either, so occasionally I just have to mark them all as read at some point. But yeah, like I don't like having those.
Do you not?
Then I'm checking it more.
Do you remember the old movies when you used to get the switchboard operator and she'd wear like the headset and she had all the plugs and she was plugging, you know, connecting your call caller and all the rest of it? Do you not feel with your mobile device and your iPad and your laptop and and all the rest of it, you feel like that operator that's just constantly fielding traffic and calls and information that's coming in at you? The reason I asked the question is I saw something on social media the other day, and we are not associated with this at all, but I found it fascinating. It was called something, I think it was like a brick or something, where you tap your phone on. It's got a bit of software and you tap your phone on it, and it only leaves on phone calls or what you choose. And people are now opting to do this to remove the option to have this communication coming into them, because the constant communication is actually severely impacting the quality of their life, or they're fatigued from it.
Yeah.
And they're choosing when to communicate. I know this happened a couple of years ago. A friend of mine had sent me a message checking in on me and how I was doing. And it happened to be in my other business the busiest month of the year. Like literally, I was passing myself going in the other direction. I was that busy. And they'd sent me a couple of messages and I was really aware that I hadn't responded. And the anxiety went, I need to respond now because I've not sent a response. And I sent a very short, yeah, all good, just cracking on with it. And it was quite dry. And they ended up phoning another friend going, it's almost like Andy's got a secretary returning the messages. I don't think everything is okay. But I only had what I felt like was seconds to respond. And I wasn't able to respond in a way that I would like to because I had so much going on. And then they portrayed that as though there was something else going on. And then that started up this other massive circle of communication that needed to go full loop and be tidied back up. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. So, you know, the problem is if I send a message going, really busy, can't talk, do they then go, oh, you know, or do you not respond to the message, and then they're going, oh, now they're not talking. It's really difficult, isn't it?
My phone, I have it restricted, so I can't receive calls at a certain time. It happens automatically. My friends now all know that there's no point phoning me after 8:30. I'm not going to answer unless I see
But you've
it.
had to train them.
I have had to train them. But also I heard something, I read somewhere else that what another person has done, because we're so used to getting instant responses to texts and emails, they actually have an autoresponder going, I will get back to you in the next 48 hours, just automatically. So they started training, because we are all expecting instant replies.
Yeah.
And they have found that really has given them a lot of space, because that means that they just get round to it when they're going to. Best thing I did was turn off all my notifications, so I cannot see if I've got any messages.
So are you kind of saying, in doing all of that, you would rather someone phoned you?
No.
No, but what I'm saying is, so the example I gave you where that person sent me the message and I was so busy,
Yeah.
ironically, I was just about to jump in the car and drive. If they'd actually phoned me, they would have heard my voice,
Yeah.
and I would have been able to speak for a bit longer. I couldn't type because I was in the car. I was about to get in the car. And that, sometimes if you're communicating, you're not getting the response that you're expecting, maybe shifting your communication style from a
Yeah.
text to a call or something like that.
There's a number of times where I'll just say, I can feel a message, a text message chain going sideways.
Yeah.
So I'll say, are you free to call?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes,
And
definitely.
then that's definitely the fastest way of,
Yeah.
or it's the easiest way for me to stop things going sideways.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but that's why I was why I asked you that question, because it's like you've set yourself up, you've set this system up, and you've kind of trained the people around you, have an expectation of this is how I communicate, and that takes a bit of time. But if you're not there today and you create a lot of anxiety for your overthinking, like I haven't got time to respond, or if I do respond, it's going to be short, is that going to be taken out of context, or whatever it is, are you better in that moment going, don't respond at all? But we know no response can be as bad as a
I just thought
bad response.
you can set, if we're coming back to text messaging, you can program your phone that when you do like a particular word, it can do a whole phrase. Maybe instead of us even doing a thumbs up to you or even a heart, we can have an automated, so you could have, look, I'm really busy right now, your message is important. Much like we do with our messages for business, we could have one for our friends.
I think also when this communication, expectation feeds into it. And with instant messaging, it's like, well, it's an instant message, therefore there should be a instant response.
We make ourselves on call 24/7.
Yeah. I got
It's
told
crazy.
once, but just because it's emailing, it's instant, think of it like a letter.
Yeah.
The person doesn't sit down immediately and write a letter straight back to you. It's weird how we have these unconscious rules. Like if I send somebody like a WhatsApp, yeah. Mm-hmm. If I haven't heard back within 48 hours, I start thinking differently. Purely because I know how much time people spend with these devices in their hand. And you're like, after 48 hours, if they've not read or responded, are they okay? Is something going on? Or are they not wanting to communicate? And I think that's the problem now, isn't it? You know, is that an unreasonable expectation? I don't know what's going on in their world. So this whole thing around communicating, but it's not so much about that, it's the way it feeds into our mental health.
Yeah.
It makes us feel.
Do you know, now with me, I won't, come Friday night, or 11 o'clock on Saturday morning, I will not talk to a customer. It's then my decompression time, my family time.
Yeah.
Do you think we ought to, like you're saying, we almost should do the same with our friends?
Yes.
You know, we should ring fence our own personal time out.
I think respecting people's time and, you know, is this a good time to be sending this message? I mean, the other night, I had a message at 11:30 at night from a customer. Now, their mind was probably thinking, I want to be ahead of the queue, so when they look at the messages in the morning. But I actually went to bed going, no, that message is there waiting for me, and I felt it like it was almost like they came and rang my doorbell.
Yeah, it prematurely puts you back into work mode. In your own, and it's not fair.
A friend of mine went and bought one of those. You can buy them. They're just the most basic mobile phone. You can text and you can call
becoming
them.
a trend now.
Yeah, and he SIM swaps at the weekend and just uses that basic phone to do phone calls and
Yeah.
That's a great
Text.
idea because we spoke about it recently. It's not just the communication that you're having with that third party. If you're sat at the table with your phone on the table, or you're sat next to your wife trying to watch a film, guilty, and you keep looking at your phone, what are you saying to that person?
They're not
You're
important.
saying that you're,
Well, it's like, you know, me and Ian are lifelong friends, and, you know, we're recording these podcasts in November. In reality, I'm probably not going to see Ian again until probably after Christmas. So, like, this evening, when we're sat having a drink together, if I'm sat there, I want to give him my undivided attention. I don't want to be 15% in the conversation and 70% going on what's in my phone, because I think, you know, sometimes you need to step away from that so you can completely be in this, if that kind of makes sense. Or, you know, if you're going like, you know, I've got some stuff going on, so I am here, but I'm really sorry if I have to check my phone, because I think technology does really steal us of the moment.
Yeah, I think
as well.
I think I've mentioned it before. I heard Joanna Lumley say that she does not have a mobile phone
Yeah.
because it means we're on call 24/7, and people expect to be able to get hold of you 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
Because she doesn't have a mobile, people don't expect. She has a landline, and if people want to get a hold of her, they have to phone the landline. They have
Well,
to leave
I
a
remember
message.
Ian getting off the plane last night, and his phone had been on silent, and he realised he'd not taken off the silent. He's like, I wonder how many messages I got, and there was a good
There's 28 on it. wasn't it?
Then your brain goes, I now need to go and process, think of responses and systematically respond to 28 messages. Now you are that switchboard
Yeah.
operator. We didn't grow up like that, did we?
No.
We just didn't.
Yeah.
And that's why I think sometimes we get overwhelmed. And you know, I think this conversation around communication is really important. So how do we get better? How do we improve?
Well, I mean, my personal thing is face-to-face interaction. So, for me, if you're anxious about, you know, some people are very anxious. Say, for example, we'll just use this as an example, but we're going to a network meeting or something to do with work or a social event. Firstly, don't always assume that everybody else in the room is. A lot of people, they'll say, oh, they're more intelligent, they know more, and you get nervous. You sort of go into this negative self-talk that bigs up this other person and makes you look. Don't believe that. The chances are they could be having exactly the same thoughts as you. And as you engage in that conversation, you'll start to realise that often, you know, the one chapter in the book behind you are. It's just your initial self-talk. If you're not confident, have some topics ready. In the back pocket, have 3 topics that you know well and you feel comfortable talking about. So if you're awkward with silences or you have 3 comments, the chances are you'll never use them. But it's like an insurance policy that just settles you down knowing that you've got something in the bank, so you're not having to think on your feet. You've got something kind of a bit premeditated if necessary. There's one.
And also, what about communicating the way that you prefer to be communicated with? My voicemail, if you ring me, it says, due to the nature of my work, most of the time I can't answer the call.
Yeah.
You may be better sending me an SMS, a WhatsApp, or an email.
Yeah.
You know, but that's not my preferred communication style. But because I'm very often not able to answer the phone because of the nature of my work, I've kind of said to people, you're better, because people would just consistently keep trying to ring me. And I get frustrated. Like, they don't know that always answering the phone for me is not always possible. So I need to tell them and then set the expectation of how it should work.
Yeah. I mean, what I was talking about there really was a little bit more about conversational. But,
Yeah.
You know, so,
But I think the communication is about communicating our needs
well,
and what works or can work for you, if that makes sense.
and being able to maintain.
Yeah.
Which is sort of some of these things I'm telling you, they're just like little tips to being able to maintain a conversation if it's something that you're not naturally attuned to.
Yeah.
An example of that is ask slightly deeper questions. Questions that sounds a bit intimidating, but questions, if you ask a question in a conversation and ask a slightly deeper one, they will say, instead of saying, so what do you do? I'm a doctor. Instead of saying, well, where do you practice? Because that's a 2-word answer. What made you want to become a dentist?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I remember, the reason that I went into what I did. So by asking certain questions, you're being able to open up the conversation for you to naturally respond to your own question and make it a
But do you
two-way
feel, we were
interaction,
talking earlier
stuff like that.
about how we communicate with ourselves. We're always talking to ourselves in our heads, and we're always telling ourselves stories inside of our heads. Do you think there are some people out there that have become uncomfortable with no communication? So if there's silence, they're uncomfortable and they have to fill the gaps.
This, I was going to say, this part of being having great communication, as Ian said earlier, is also listening, not waiting to speak, but also we can come across as being confident by just pausing and not trying to fill those spaces. Because sometimes when we're trying to fill the spaces and talk more and more and more, actually that's an anxiety, and that becomes overwhelming.
Yeah.
But certainly something that I used to do, and it's definitely something you learn if you're going to be doing presentations or you're going to be talking on stages. Taking a pause to kind of remind yourself what you're going to say, or to reflect, allow there to be spaces, because some of the deeper conversations will come from just holding those silences and just being open to it. And from there, it's okay to have silence.
Well, silence is an incredible,
Silence
powerful
is
form
powerful.
of communication.
It is. I've got a friend who works for my other business. We can have really deep, meaningful conversations, and we can sit in a vehicle for 2 hours and not speak and not be uncomfortable.
Yep.
That is a skill. Because
And not everybody's comfortable with that.
Yeah, it's like the silence, and therefore I need to fill it with noise or anxious chatter, which actually is not good quality communication, if that kind of makes sense. It's actually, it's just like a wasp buzzing around in your ear, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. I like it when I've been, as we know, I've done a lot of traveling this last year, and over the last 12 months. I love being around other people who we can both sit there and just silently read our book.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. When nobody's feeling that they have to fill that space and
They're
talk
not
at
popping
you.
their eyes out and rolling their
And you
eyes
just
at
read
you.
it, and it's like, oh my gosh, like, I love that.
Yeah. So what we're really saying with communication, especially for overthinkers, is one, be careful, be aware of the stories that you're telling yourself in your head. And as an overthinker, I think one of the best things you can do is, if you're spiraling, is one, don't believe your anxious thoughts. Ask for clarification. I just want to check. Yeah. I want to make sure that I've understood that correctly. If you know that you're communicating with an overthinker, have a bit of compassion, or be prepared to shift your communication style, if that makes sense. And I think if you can become a better communicator, it makes you a better human being. And
It opens
learn.
a lot of doors for you. Absolutely.
Learn.
Ability to communicate.
Yes.
And another thing is, it's as long as you're rightly saying, don't be afraid to just say, is that right? Have I got that right? Make sure that you're interpreting it correctly.
Yeah.
But also, when you're overthinking, validate that for yourself. Ask yourself, when you're overthinking, is that actually based on fact? If this was in a court of law, would they agree with this version of events that I've got going in my head, or am I overthinking?
Yeah, why
And
are you
it's
thinking this
recognising
about
you
this
are
person?
overthinking.
They've not responded to my message for 48 hours. Right. So why do you think they don't like you anymore? Well, because they've not responded for 48 hours. Right, where's the evidence to support that? What were they like last time you were together? Absolutely fine. Right, okay then. Well, we need to work off that evidence.
Yeah, work off the facts, not the story.
And if your anxiety's spiralling, don't trust your thinking. Yeah, don't trust your thinking. I kind of really enjoyed that chat about communicating, and I think it's raising that awareness that even when you're not speaking, you're communicating through your non-verbal body language and your facial expressions and the way that you stand and all the rest of it. And it's something that we should all, I think, have a responsibility for improving. I'd be really interested to hear from some of the listeners about what the insights they've taken from this, things maybe they need to improve on, or ways that they've shifted their communication style with their family, friends and colleagues. And as always, whether you're listening on Apple or Spotify or watching us on YouTube, please click the little notification bell and the follow, because it really does help us. Drop a comment, send us an email, and we look forward to talking to you in the next episode. Thanks for watching.
If you or someone close to you needs to access mental health support, please contact your GP Or, if it's out with normal office hours, get in touch with NHS 24 on 111. Alternatively, contact the Samaritans on 116 123. All calls are free of charge from any phone. You can also find more support information on the Tickety Boo website, ticketyboopodcast.co.uk.